Hey everyone, welcome to the Star Wars Canon Cantina, a show where we try to answer the question, who is Luke Skywalker before the release of Star Wars Episode 9? Welcome to our first episode. My name is Mike. I'm joined by my Star Wars best friend of more than 25 years, Jesse. Jesse, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic, Mike, and I'm here to talk about my favorite character of all time. And so I'm excited.
Yeah, well, we assume that you like Star Wars if you're tuning in to the Canon Cantina podcast. Uh, Before we dive into A New Hope, which is the beginning of the Luke Skywalker story, we're just going to talk a little bit about ourselves so you kind of give an idea of who we are and our Star Wars experience. So, Jesse, how are you first introduced to Star Wars?
Well, Mike, this is a great story, or at least I think it is. It was literally my first memory, so that's a fun start. And I was about three and a half, approaching four, let's just say that. And my first memory is remembering my parents discussing which parts of A New Hope to cover my eyes on. And my mom was very staunch in her stance on the Tusken Raiders or the Sand People, and my dad was staunch in his opinion on the Cantina. But the rest of the movie would be fine, they thought.
That is just like your dad
Yeah,
to censor the cantina.
so I think what ended up happening was they couldn't come to an agreement, so they covered my eyes during both parts.
Oh, nice.
So I didn't see Luke and 3PO in that peril with the Tusken Raiders, and I didn't see all the slew of characters, including this. Keep in mind, this is pre-special edition, the werewolf in the cantina.
Oh, yeah.
So, scary stuff. So that was all gone. But anyways, that's my beginning of my Star Wars journey. And literally from that moment onward, I've become and been a Star Wars fanatic. Every medium, when I was a kid, 5 years old onward, my brother and I had the movies on repeat. We would just watch 3 movies in order, like different day of the week, and just keep it going every night. It's crazy. So, and Mike and I met when we were about 6, 7. So at that point, we had started getting into the Star Wars video games.
That's
and
right,
books and books. So then it really took off. I'm here. I am in 3rd grade, reading the Thrawn trilogy and Shadows of the Empire, and it's getting real serious. So, but there's a lot more after that. We'll get to that later. But that's just the beginnings.
Yeah, my exposure to Star Wars is different is unique in a different way. My first exposure was I was 5 years old on a family vacation to Disney World in Orlando.
Of course,
we rode Star Tours, and I had never seen a Star Wars movie, had no idea what any of them were. But I loved the Star Tours ride. I thought Captain Rex was awesome.
Yes.
I made my grandpa go back and ride it with me a bunch of times. And my parents bought me my first Star Wars action figures because you have to leave through the gift shop. Obviously, they bought me some stuff there.
Oh, yeah.
And then when we got back from vacation, my dad recorded the movies off of TV. And I watched those until the VHS tapes were breaking. I was a little disappointed, I'm not going to lie, that Captain Rex did not factor into the movies. But
At all.
But I learned to get over that.
So you were at your VHSs as well. So yeah, so did I.
Yeah.
And I had that original VHS box set. I don't know if many of you guys remember, but it was the one with the actual drawn art with the muscular Luke, the shirt open, and Leia holding onto his leg, and that trilogy. I have that. I actually still have that New Hope, the Empire, and Return of the Jedi have disappeared, but it's still a relic to me. It's late 1980s, early 1990s trilogy, way before the black and blue box set that everybody's familiar with.
Yeah, I got that one when my recorded off of TV VHSs died.
That's so good.
So we met when we were super young, just watched Star Wars all the time, started playing games. What was your fandom journey like? We're in our early 30s now. Did you stay a fan the whole time through all the prequels? What was that journey like for you?
Yeah, Mike. I've been pretty much a fanatic the entire time. Star Wars really has never waned for me, which is good to say. There's probably been times of less fanaticism, but I would say I'm still wildly into it more than probably most human beings. So for me, I don't know, when the prequels came out, we were at a prime age for that as well, middle school age.
Yeah, they hit us. We were the target audience when those came out.
And we saw those multiple times in theaters, or at least I did. I know you did as well. So I was all with it, and man, what a golden age of games too during that time. The prequels and the just original trilogy games from around that time. And like I said, I started reading the expanded universe when I was in second and third grade. So for me, it's just been constant because there was never a drought of content. Really, I mean, the expanded universe kept going this entire time as well. So and let's not mention, we've been mentioning games, but I haven't got to mention tabletop games yet,
Yeah.
Mike. But tabletop games are a passion of mine, and when I realized that there were Star Wars tabletop games, it just kept going. It's that tactile feel of having Star Wars out there on front of you is fantastic. So.
Yeah. I had a similar fandom journey, but there was definitely a time where I was not uninvested, but I really only cared about the movies. We played all the old LucasArts games, all the Nintendo 64 and PlayStation 1 games, all that.
Super Nintendo too.
Yeah, yeah. And like through middle school and high school read all the expanded universe books.
Of
I,
course.
I fell off the Star Wars wagon probably 2/3 of the way through the new Jedi Order, the Yuuzhan Vong arc.
Right.
It went on too long. It started
Early
to
2000s,
yeah,
mid 2000s.
right at the end of high school, going to college. Uh, I fell off then, quit reading the books. I still played games when they came out, and I still liked the movies, but I was not fully into the books or the EU or anything. Then after, oh, I don't know, 7, 8 years away, I read the, what was it called, the Bloodline saga, right? And it was not the worst, but it was also not good. I'm of the opinion that a lot of the old EU legends was thrown out for good reason, but there's a happy side to this story because when Disney acquired Lucasfilm, Episode 7 came back, and sort of on a whim, Jesse and I, we live in separate states now, but we decided to meet up at Star Wars Celebration in Anaheim, and that rekindled all of the Star Wars love for me. I got into the tabletop games that Jesse was already playing. Was all super stoked for Episode 7. Read some more of the old EU, even though I knew it was thrown out then. Read Aftermath, the first new canon novel, and I was back then. So I am a fan that was brought back by the Disney canon.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So, because a lot of people have been pushed away, and a lot of people have been brought back, and a lot of people are here that have never been here before. So, we've got a lot of interesting perspectives going on,
Yeah.
in my opinion. So, but my love never waned. I mean, but in some ways, I guess, Mike, there was a lull of Star Wars content, probably the 5 years leading up to Force Awakens. So, I will say that.
When LucasArts closed as a studio and games stopped and all that, yeah.
The EU basically stopped. They kind of finished a couple of the arcs they were doing, and then they just started doing like prequel type books, as in not prequels as in the films, but prequels to books and things like that. Zahn did the, what was it, Outbound Flight, stuff like that. Stuff
I actually liked that one.
I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
Thrawn shredding up the Trade Federation was super, super cool. But there's a lot of things like that. But
we're not going to focus
Star
on
Wars
those
wasn't a
on
lull.
this show.
No,
we are going
not
to
yet, at least.
Not yet, yeah. Our idea is we've got a year and a half until the episode 9 comes out. Episode 8, The Last Jedi, was so divisive among fans, and a lot of that is centered around Luke. So we're just going to explore who is Luke Skywalker in the old canon, the new canon. Who's the guy that showed up on screen and threw the lightsaber over his shoulder? So one last thing before we hop into talking about Episode 4, New Hope. Let's rank the 4 Disney films that we have so far, from favorite to least favorite.
This is hard, Mike. Honestly, this is difficult for me to lock down, and maybe that's just my love of Star Wars. I don't know. I haven't come to a final conclusion on this. I'll preface with that.
Rankings change based on mood, but today it was pretty easy for me to throw down.
Yeah, I see your list.
Don't laugh.
Our lists are almost mirror images of each other.
They really are. So for me, I actually have The Last Jedi as my favorite of the new films.
4 films.
Followed by Force Awakens. And I actually have Solo in 3rd place and Rogue One in 4th. Those two are pretty close to each other, but I give Solo a slight edge. And that just might be the newness of it still.
Yeah, honestly, I thought Solo for you might have been like, maybe not interchangeable with 2, but I thought for you it might have been like a 2.5 if that existed
Yeah.
for us.
Now, don't take this as I dislike Rogue One. I think it's a great movie, and the last third is the
Might
best
be some of the
Star
best
Wars. It's the best Star Wars ever put to film, I think, in terms of
That's
action.
saying a lot.
But the
That's
first,
saying a lot. Yeah.
but when you look at it as a whole film, I like Solo better.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So what's
Yeah,
your
and
ranking?
well, mine's almost an exact mirror images of Mike's, at least at this moment. I'd say mine, Mike, is Rogue One is my number one. Force Awakens is my number two, and Solo is my number three, and The Last Jedi is my number four. So, and depending on the day, things could swap around, but that's where it is for me at the moment.
So
So,
this podcast is actually me having a year and a half to convince Jesse that The Last Jedi is the best of the new movies. Just kidding.
oh my
We'll get there.
man,
We'll get there.
we'll get there.
But
Yeah.
we decided to explore who Luke Skywalker is. So we're going to start with Episode 4, A New Hope. We both rewatched the movie in preparation for this episode. I watched the current, I think it's the most current Blu-ray release, the most canon version.
2011 Blu-ray,
Yeah.
correct?
And what would you watch, Jesse?
I watched a fan coined, we'll call that, despecialized edition. So several of you guys will know what I'm talking about, but if you don't, I'll just go on a quick stint about this. So a lot of fans have made despecialized editions on the internet of the specialized edition of the trilogy, and those basically are modern formats, MKV 1080p Blu-ray copies of the non-special editions of Star Wars. So if you could take those VHSs and make them Blu-ray quality, that's what these are, because those don't actually exist in the universe. Laserdisc was the closest we ever got to that, and that was a long time ago. So this is actually Harmy's. I always mispronounce his name because he's from across the ocean from us, from Europe, but I believe it's Harmy, and he has the most comprehensive, correct fan edition of the despecialized edition. He's been working on it for literally a decade. So it's a great thing to watch, Mike, and I'm excited to get Mike some copies.
Yeah, I'll be sure to check that out. So, as you do when you want to learn about somebody, you go to the internet and you check Wikipedia, or in the Star Wars fans' case, you go to Wikipedia.
Of course.
So, if you're listening to this and you have no idea who Luke Skywalker is, or you haven't watched Star Wars, I don't know how you got here, but welcome.
Yeah,
But Jesse's going to
100%.
do a real quick run through of like a one paragraph version of the 40+ year history of Luke Skywalker.
Right, because our whole show is going to tackle these very things. So Luke Skywalker was a character portrayed by Mark Hamill, and he was an important figure in the Rebel Alliance struggle against the Galactic Empire. He's the twin brother of the rebellion leader Princess Leia Organa of Alderaan, a friend and brother-in-law of the smuggler Han Solo, an apprentice to Jedi Masters Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda, son of the fallen Jedi Anakin Skywalker, who becomes Darth Vader, and mother, Queen of Naboo, Padme Amidala, Senator, and the maternal uncle of Kylo Ren / Ben Solo. Spoilers. The now non-canon discarded legends depict him as a powerful Jedi Master, various powers, which we'll get into in the future. He was the husband of Mara Jade, RIP, and the father of Ben Skywalker, and the maternal uncle of Jason Jaina and Anakin Solo, a fan favorite character. Now, what's really interesting here, Mike?
Anyway.
Yeah, Anakin Solo, I think. Yeah, I don't know if you can dispute that. Now, Jason. Yeah, yeah.
That's for another episode. Anyway, so in 2015, Empire Magazine ranked Luke Skywalker as the 50th greatest movie character of all time. Woo. And on the list of 100 greatest fictional characters, fandommania.com ranked the character at number 14. Really,
that is insane.
I think both of those are travesties. I think it should be higher.
I do too, but think about all film. 50th. I mean, that's crazy, Mike. Seriously. Vader's higher, by the way.
Yeah. No, he's the more iconic.
And so is Han Solo,
character.
I believe, but I could be wrong. Last time I checked it, but the fact that we have Luke in the top 50 is just absolutely insane. Of all film, we're talking classic films in the 50s and stuff onward.
What was he above Michael Bay's Optimus Prime?
Yes.
What about Bumblebee?
trying to trigger me here. What about the '80s Optimus Prime? I'm not sure about that. We'll
Well,
have to look into
they,
that.
they
There's,
probably didn't count that movie for their list.
Mike, and keeping things in mind, there's a lot of similarities between Optimus Prime and Luke Skywalker.
Oh
So,
Jesus! All right, so the Luke Skywalker that most people are familiar with is the guy played by Mark Hamill in the 3 original trilogy movies. But
right,
when we were prepping for starting this podcast, we kind of came to the conclusion that there are sort of 4 different perspectives on Luke. There's the old Luke, the original trilogy Luke of people who've just seen those movies, and that's all they know about him. Then
it's
there's
most of the world, right?
yeah,
Most of the world.
that's most people. Then there's the super fans like us who consumed all the EU or Legends canon, the games, the comics, and everything in between. So we knew the full story of Luke Skywalker, the good and
Plus,
the bad.
right.
And then after the canon reboot or whatever you want to call it, there's the new Luke, the people who just have seen Luke in 5 movies now, episode 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Right.
And then the people who consume all the new canon material, whether that's new Disney canon books, the Marvel Comics line, the new games, new shows like Star Wars Rebels, and soon Resistance.
Sure. Yeah. As in the new EU in a way,
Yeah.
which is the new Disney canon EU. So we've seen snippets of Luke there as well. So we think with you guys that these 4 perspectives of Luke we're going to look at extensively, and it's going to paint the picture of what we're going to learn about Luke Skywalker, who he was through culture, and who he is today, and how that's different. Because I'm really interested to get into this, Mike, because I think my perspective on Luke is a hodgepodge mash of all these things. So I'm really interested to see just the text.
It could be so. Growing up, I think I know the answer to this, but I want to ask it before we go into it. Were you a Luke Skywalker kid or a Han Solo kid?
I was a Luke Skywalker kid.
Yep,
So,
and I was a Han Solo kid. I think we bring
Yep.
some good, valid but differing perspectives to the movies and books that we're going to be talking about over the course of the podcast.
yeah, and I still play RPGs and stuff like a Luke Skywalker kid, not like a Han Solo kid.
Well,
You know what
that's
I mean?
boring.
Well, maybe not RPGs as in tabletop, but more like Knights of the Republic and Mass Effect and things like that. I'm definitely Luke Skywalker in those. I can't hide it. But that second playthrough, yeah, that's more of a Han Solo. So
So every episode, we're going to look at a piece of canon material, whether that's the old Legends canon that's been thrown out, a book or a book arc, one of the old movies. We're starting with the movies. And sometimes when we get to them in the timeline, we're going to talk about the new canon material. But we're going to start with episode 4, go forward in the Star Wars timeline from there, and talk about both sort of canon timelines. But for each piece of media that we look at, we're going to ask the same questions. First question, what state is Luke in at the beginning of the story? Then, how do the events of that story impact his development as a character? And then if it's a current canon source, a Disney canon source, does that fit with the Luke that we meet in The Last Jedi? And if it's a Legends source, would this make him different than the Luke we meet in The Last Jedi? And if so, would that make The Last Jedi a better film?
Ever since Luke disappeared, people have been looking for him.
I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue you.
A lot of rumors, stories,
And I became a legend.
people that knew him best.
Luke. Young Skywalker.
Luke,
It's all true.
I am a Jedi. Like my father before me.
All of it.
very good, very good. So yeah, of course, Mike, we have to start with the origin point of Star Wars and the character of Luke Skywalker all along. We have 1977 all the way to Star Wars Episode 9, soon to come out. So we have a whole gambit of content to look at here, but we got to start with 77, Star Wars A New Hope, where
That's
it all
right.
began.
So, at the start of New Hope, let's just tackle this first question. What state is Luke in at the beginning of the story? The notes I took about this after watching the movie again for the billionth time is he is whiny.
Yeah. Whiny's fine.
Well,
to
like
say.
the first 6 or 8 minutes that he's on screen, he's whining about something.
Or you could say he's young, impulsive, impatient, wants greater things, but he's
Those are all nice ways of describing being whiny, and it's fine. We were teenagers. We were that way. I was a high school teacher for a long time. Just teenagers are that way. I get it. But I was gonna go to Tossie Station to pick up some power converters. He he's a whiny kid who doesn't like the situation he's in,
Right.
and wants something more. So that, I mean, you know, I'm being a little sarcastic when I say that he was whiny, but that's something that was also relatable for just about everybody that saw the film.
Yeah, just he was young and he was just like a teenager like them. What I find really interesting, Mike, is we'll start here right at the beginning of the film. Like we don't see Luke for almost an entire half hour of
Yeah.
Star Wars: New Hope. It was a very unconventional thing to do at the time when George did this. He kind of had the cold Stanley Kubrick open, mainly visuals, and R2 and 3PO kind of just doing some world building. And then we're introduced to Luke at the Jawa garage sale, if you want to call it that, at the Lars homestead. And, you know,
Yeah, garage sale sounds better than slave auction.
yeah. But you're right. Here's some quotes I have from the film right at this point. Biggs is right. I'm never going to get out of here. And then 3PO brings up to him, where are we? I don't know where we're at. And Luke says, well, if there's a bright center in the universe, you're on the planet that is farthest from. And I think that's a really good line for world building, but it's also kind of Luke's perspective on the world. He feels like he's just kind of trapped on this dust bowl planet where there's nothing for him. And he wants more, you know? And 3PO's like, well, we've been in some battles. And Luke's like, wait, what? You know, the rebellion versus the Empire? And 3PO's like, I can't really remember. So
I had my mind wiped a few movies ago.
but you
so-
see Luke's interest. You see his voice rises and he stands up and, you know, he's like, that's what I want to do right there, you know? And it's so funny.
Yeah, no, I agree with all the things you said, but I am going to tell the listeners a story. So as we were making this shared Google Doc of notes that we're reading off of to keep us somewhat on track, we were texting back and forth about it. And Jesse says, I'm going to put Luke quotes from the movie in red, just like Jesus in the Bible. And I lost my mind laughing when I read that because to a lot of people, us included, Star Wars is kind of like the Bible. So
Yeah. One, it's just so interesting to have Star Wars quotes and plot points, but only an emphasis on Luke. Like this is an exercise in film that I've never done before, Mike. You know,
Yeah, no,
looking at one character.
I haven't either. I just thought it was funny comparing Luke quotes to Jesus quotes in the Bible. That's the only.
Yeah. That red text in the New Testament, you know, that's Luke Skywalker's words. So immediately I'm just going to keep forward with the plot here,
Yeah, no, go
Mike.
for it.
So you know of the rebellion versus the Empire. So Luke's kind of establishing that he wants to be part of that. And we don't know. He says he wants to transfer to the academy this year. And Owen says, no, I'm keeping you on for another year. And Luke's like, that's a whole nother season. As Mike would say, you like, he's like, and you know,
But I want to do it now.
and his aunt does advocate for him. She says, Owen, all of his friends have been gone for years. Like you can't just keep him here. And the truth that we know as fans is that a lot of Owen keeping him there is fear. It's fear of him, Luke, falling down a path that Anakin did, you know, getting in trouble. Let's just say that for now. But it's really interesting how his uncle's protecting him in a weird way, you know.
Yeah,
But-
no, I actually wrote down in my notes just quote from what I wrote down. Baru gets it. Like she gets what's actually going on with Luke, and she's like, "Oh, Owen, you're being so stubborn and overprotective and everything." But she gets it. She gets what he really wants to do.
Also, some really lines I like here that inform the audience a lot is Luke says, you know, I think those droids were stolen, and I think that might even belong to old Ben. And that's when Owen says, oh, that you know that wizard's just an old crazy hermit. Stay away, and I want you to wipe those droids' memory tomorrow, first thing when you wake up. Basically, his uncle's protecting him from. I mean, and you see Owen and Beru give each other eyes when Luke says that. You know, like, oh, he's catching on to the real story here, and that goes
He's
back
catching
to the
on to
prequels.
the fact that they both have the last name Kenobi.
Well, Annie says like, you know, died about the same time as your father, and he's like, you knew my father, and he's just like, just forget it, Luke, forget it. So it's really interesting. But then, of course, Luke discovers the, you know, let's just say the call to action for the main character here. Help me out.
Hero's journey, right there. Call, nice. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope. R2 randomly showing this hologram to Luke, and he's mesmerized, of course. So It's adventure. It's a beautiful girl. He doesn't know what's going on. He says, "Who is she? She's beautiful."
He's innocent. He doesn't know that it's his sister at this time.
Yeah.
And to be fair, neither did George.
I wonder if she means old Ben. So, and then Luke says, "Well, looks like I'm going nowhere," when his uncle tells him he can't do anything, you know? So, but here's a really pivotal point to me. After this discussion with his aunt and uncle, Luke goes out and looks at the horizon at the twin suns. We hear the Force theme swell. This is our first time hearing the Force theme in all of Star Wars. This is going to be a theme that carries through with Luke and other Jedi several times in the series on here on out.
Yeah.
So it's pretty-
Another note that I wrote down at this point is that this movie sucks without John Williams and Ben Burt doing the score and sound design.
Okay. Yeah, well, but good thing they gave it like 11 out of 10s.
Oh yeah, no, it's fantastic because they're in there. But if they had put in contemporary late 70s,
Right.
music as the score, it's a totally different experience. That's much lower quality.
That was all George, man. He blew people's minds. They said, "Don't do that. Don't do classical music. Don't do that."
We'll talk about George blowing minds again towards the end of the show once we go through the movie. So they have the Sand People encounter where they hijack his speeder. And since I watched the special edition, this is the point where I wrote down, God, the special edition hasn't aged very well, because this is where he does the crate dragon yell that they replaced with a new sound that I don't even know how. It's clearly like 16 different things mashed together. I guess
So, Mike, I'm about to show my nerdiness here. So you don't realize that the Blu-ray is even a different sound from the special edition.
Yeah, and I knew that when I said it, but I mean just the Canon version.
Sure, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like a man screaming like a dragon rather than a weird dragon sound. That's what it was in the...
Sure, that's what they were going for, but anyway, it's not how I received it. But Obi-Wan rescues him. He takes him back to his place. Was that his house, I guess?
Yeah, Obi-Wan's house and the
Not
jungle and
not
waste.
hut, but not house. His dwelling.
Obi-Wan literally lives in this place that no one goes. So that's interesting to his character. But yeah, some pivotal lines here to Luke's development. He says, "I was once a Jedi Knight, the same as your father. And your father was the best starfighter pilot in the galaxy, a cunning warrior. And I understand you become quite the good pilot yourself." And Luke kind of sheepishly looks away. And then he says, "Also a good friend." He says that about Anakin.
Yeah.
And this is so much backstory on Luke's father. We now we know his father's gone, dead. That's what we're told. And that his father was a warrior, a pilot, a Jedi Knight. These things we've never heard. Luke's never heard either. And we're learning these with Luke. And at this point, he gives Luke the legacy saber, is what we call it. The blue lightsaber that was passed down from his father. He said, "Your father wanted you to have this when you were old enough," which is a funny line, knowing the prequels. He says, "Your father's lightsaber," emphasized like that. A weapon of the Jedi Knight.
Oh yeah,
And of course,
I love
Luke
Alec
has
Guinness
some...
in this movie.
Yeah, he kind of him and Peter Cushing just carry this film. It's wild.
So we didn't explicitly say it when we started rolling into it, but we are on to our second question. How do the events of the story impact Luke's development as a character? And I made a couple notes at this scene when Luke says, basically, no, he wasn't. He was a navigator for a spice freighter. I wrote down,
Right.
No, I'm proud of my dad. He was a navigator for drug runners. So that's
Interesting.
That's a thing.
Well, that's what his uncle told him. And yeah, and Obi-Wan says, "That's your uncle talking." Almost telling him, he's almost saying to Luke's face, like, your uncle's lied to you all these years, but he's not ready to say that yet to Luke. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, you're right. Like, but I just, now that Solo is out and we've seen the spice mines of Kessel, and we're like, oh,
He's a cargo.
It's drugs. Like, he was a navigator for some drug traffickers.
Maybe that pits the idea of how bad being a Jedi Knight was in Owen's eyes, you know? I mean, just like the idea of it, you know, what Anakin became too. I don't know. It's really interesting. So, but of course, this leads right into Luke saying, "How did my father die?" And then Obi-Wan says, "A young pupil of mine named Darth Vader betrayed and murdered your father." Vader was seduced by the dark side of the Force. And this is how the Force is introduced to Luke and the audience. And Luke says, "The Force?" And then, of course, we got these brilliant lines by Alec Guinness, Obi-Wan. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us, it penetrates us, and binds the galaxy together. And then just kind of hangs there.
Which Luke later paraphrases to Rey in his
Right.
description of the Force after he does the whole like slap her hand with the leaf thing.
Yeah, that part. But yeah, Yoda does this as well in Empire. My favorite part of all of Star Wars is Yoda, the Yoda monologue, where he's talking about the Force, and we'll get to that when we get to Empire. But so of course now at this point, Obi-Wan says, "I've seemed to have found it," and he touches R2, and the hologram immediately comes on, which is a great comedic moment.
He touches R2, who there's still not a really good canon explanation for how he does not recognize R2. Is there?
Well, I've heard explanations. I'm not sure if you're going to like them, Mike, but in the theme of things, R2's like a blue Mustang or something.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many blue Mustangs.
There
in the
are
world.
R2 units out there, but to say I don't remember ever owning a droid that looked just like this one, or my best friend owning a droid
like this
that looked just like this one that we went on so many adventures with. I think it goes with the theme of Obi-Wan telling lies or stories from a certain point of view.
He's easing Luke into this world.
Yeah,
Because there's and so of course we have the iconic line, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope," from Leia. And then Luke, and there's just silence for a minute, like a couple seconds, and then just Obi-Wan slowly turns to Luke and's like, "You must come with me to Alderaan." If you're, and it's another call to action to Luke. And Luke's like, "I gotta stay here. I gotta help my uncle. I can't do any of this stuff. I can't get involved." And Obi-Wan's like, "I need your help. She needs your help. I'm much too old for this."
Well, and I think that's part of the hero's journey is the hero first denies the call to action.
A couple times, right.
But
Yes.
then he sees the skeletons of his burning aunt and uncle and is like, oh, well, I guess I will go on this adventure.
Right. And Mike led us right into the next scene. So we have a couple scenes with Vader and Tarkin and the dissolving of the Imperial Senate and all that good stuff. And then we go right back to Luke and Obi-Wan, and we see them pulling up on the Jawa Sandcrawler. It's destroyed. And Luke has the realization that the Jawas are destroyed because the Imperials were looking for R2 and 3PO, and he runs home. Owen and Beru are dead. More than dead. They're burnt to their skeletons.
Very dead.
And the homestead's on fire, so Luke's entire home is gone. Everything he's known.
Gary the Stormtrooper accidentally started that fire. If you
No,
watch
it's
Star Wars Robot Chicken.
You gotta, man.
Okay.
So many things.
Sticking to actual canon.
Yeah.
My bad.
Yeah, no. You know the Boba Fett theories, right? That's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
No disintegrations, but so he comes back to Obi-Wan and says, "I want to come with you and become a Jedi like my father." So like now his hate for the Empire now has been channeled into, yes, we do need to go help this girl. Yes, I trust you and I want you to teach me. So then they go to Mos Eisley.
I'm going to argue with that though, because he wanted to join the Empire. To get out of where he was. And this is something I noticed in a couple parts. Like, the rebellion against the Empire. Great. Which side do you want to be on? Because, and I know that this is a decision that a lot of young people have faced in the history of our country and today. Joining the military, like it or not, is a way to get a college education or to, get out of your current situation.
That's what Luke kind of wanted, yeah.
Yeah. So just another
the Empire
way,
was recruiting everywhere, as we've seen now in Solo.
Yeah.
Non-canon, like EU aside. Right?
That's another way to make it more relatable to the real world. Like, do I join this, thing that I know is going to improve my status in life and get me out of here, but I fundamentally disagree with, or.
But what's interesting at this point in the story is I don't know if he's thinking about Leia and Obi-Wan and Bail Organa, I guess, technically. Those three people as like rebellion, He's just thinking like...
He doesn't know enough to think that way, yeah. He's just like the people fighting the Empire.
Yeah, and I don't even if it goes that deep, I just think Leia's like needs help, and he
that
trusts
girl's pretty,
Obi-Wan.
I'm going to help her.
Yeah. A girl? More than that girl that at the Tashi station? Yeah. That's already dating my buddy? Yeah. Deleted scene. So
I wish there was more bigs in the movie.
Me too, man. It's painful. Actually, watching that in the despecialized edition, which we'll get to in a little bit, was painful. The big scene being gone was hard because now when they're going down the trench, he's saying, referencing past stuff with Biggs, it's not as relatable to the audience if you're looking at it from a clean slate. But so they go to Mos Eisley. You'll never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. I love the line. Al Guinness once again being incredible. These are not the droids you're looking for. This is Obi-Wan using the Force to influence the stormtroopers to not take Luke's droids and check them, basically the serial numbers and all that good stuff, and get them basically killed. And then Obi-Wan says to him, the Force can have an influence on the weak-minded. And Luke kind of like nods his head like, wow, there's a lot more to this Force than I know.
The weak-minded Luke was influenced right then. No, I'm just kidding. And then we see Luke have his encounter with Ponda Baba and Dr. Evazan. Doesn't go well for Luke at first, but then it goes worse for Ponda Baba.
Yeah, we see Obi-Wan draw his lightsaber, which is fun, and he just does like 2 quick moves, very samurai-esque, and they're on the floor. So
much more reminiscent of the Obi-Wan we saw in season 3 of Star Wars Rebels during his final encounter with Darth Maul.
Very samurai. So you can see George's influence there and his obsession with the Kurosawa there. But, so then at this point they meet Han and Chewie. And this is a great moment in the film because Han and Chewie are great characters, but you also see
a great
Luke.
Moment if you watch the canon version, because I had to watch Greedo shoot first.
Well, that's after this, but yeah, you're right.
Everyone knows that Han shot first, and thank you, Ron Howard, for reestablishing that.
Yeah, I watched the despecialized edition, so he's gone. He gone. So Greedo wasn't even halfway through that last word, and I've been waiting for this for a long time.
Well, how fortunate for you that you didn't have to watch the version with the crappy CG Jabba standing outside the Falcon and Boba Fett CG'd into the corner, who has to literally walk to the middle of the shot and turn and look at the camera so the audience knows, hey, that's Boba Fett. He's cool. Aren't you happy we put this scene in here?
Yeah, the Boba Fett in that scene frustrates the most of that entire scene, more than the job or any of that, because it does establish some of Han's arc, even though we don't need it that early for the audience, but it does. Anyways, it's so funny. So
sorry.
Yeah. So what's really cool is when we see Han and Luke meet, they immediately start bantering. It's kind of becomes a hallmark of their friendship. Han's like, 10,000. Luke says 10,000. We could buy our own ship for that. And Han's like, who's gonna fly it, kid? You? And he's like, I'm not such a bad pilot myself. You should just watch me fly. And they start. And Obi-Wan's like, okay. You guys stop. We can give you 2,000 now, plus 15 when we reach Alderaan, because Bale's got pockets,
deep Alderaan pockets. Yeah, I do like this exchange more now that Solo is out. It's not a direct like rip off or anything, but you can definitely see some influence. Han sort of learned this banter from Tobias Beckett, even though they were ultimately together for a short amount of time in Solo, a Star Wars story. It was a very pivotal and impactful time for Han because, Beckett, played by Woody Harrelson, bantered a lot that way too.
Yeah, and Han's like, these guys must be really desperate. They said, we don't want any Imperial entanglements. So they sell Luke's speeder. They go to the Falcon. Luke, of course, says the iconic line, what a piece of junk. And Han's like, hey, man, she'll make 0.5 past light speed. She got where it counts. I made a lot of special modifications myself. When you just get on board and we'll get out of here. Then, of course, they get attacked by the stormtroopers because they figured it out.
Random Star Wars trivia. What docking bay are they in?
94.
Okay,
94.
Yeah, my man, I knew that was an easy one for you.
And you gotta do the Alec Guinness where he repeats everything twice.
94.
94. Yeah, he says things twice a lot. He was a good friend. So yeah, it's really good stuff. But so at this point, the Falcon escapes Mos Eisley. Han gets past the Imperial cruisers, which he mentions are Corellian, right?
He does. And I want to make a note here because this was my first time watching this movie since The Last Jedi or Solo came out. And the first time you see Han's dice, Chewie bumps his head on them when he's getting into the co-pilot seat of the Falcon.
Yes, which makes them even more obvious in a way.
Yeah, it's something I was like, I watched this how many times? How did that not register as something to me? But it was pretty obvious. Like, oh, hey, Chewie just bumped his head on the dice that Kira gave him.
It's good
So
stuff.
I know they go away later, and it was it was really just a product of the time and George Lucas and his love of cars and racing and everything. But I thought it was cool that they're actually still there.
Yeah, it's very good. And at this point, the Falcon's flying to Alderaan. More stuff with the Imperials, more stuff with Vader. Then we get back to the Falcon, and Obi-Wan has his little heart attack where he sits down. He's felt a great disturbance of the Force. A million voices cried out, and then suddenly nothing. You better get back on with your exercises. So then Luke goes
Go
back
do your
to,
homework, kid.
yeah, the remote training, which is this little droid that flies in the sky. It's called a remote. And we surmise as an audience that this trip on the Falcon has been taking hours, weeks. We don't know how long, but certainly more than 30 minutes, an hour, whatever time has passed kind of in the film time.
I
Quite
do
some
like
time.
that in the film universe, the rules of hyperspace travel are kept vague. I know that the like West End and Wizards and even
Right.
the Fantasy Flight RPG tabletop games try to define rules for hyperspace travel. I like that it's sort of just ambiguous and whatever fits the story best in the film universe.
Well, and I like it for Luke's arc too, because it seems like Obi-Wan's like, you better get back to your exercises. Like, these are exercises they've worked on a little bit on the Falcon over time, over a couple days at least. And
See, that's not the impression I got, because I wrote this down in my hate comparison column of my notes. People say that Rey figures stuff out really quickly that has to do with the Force, and I wrote down that
she does.
that Obi-Wan says, "No, Luke, put the blast shield down and trust your feelings, or reach out or something." And oh, okay, well now I can do it. So Luke has the same thing happen.
I don't think it's the same thing, but you're right. It's closer than people would like to think. But Rey's doing like high level stuff, like mind tricks and stuff.
We'll talk about Rey when we get to episode 7.
Luke's not good enough to do mind tricks in this first movie, but we'll get there. And Luke finally, he keeps doubting himself and doubting himself and doubting himself. And Obi-Wan's like, no, reach out with your feelings. And, he actually deflects a couple bolts and says, I almost could see the remote. I did feel something. And then Obi-Wan has the iconic line that I've said many times in my life, because my dad said many times throughout my entire life: you've taken your first steps into a much larger world. My dad's been saying that since I was 3 or 4 years old. 3 or 4 years old. Once again, my Star Wars story is so funny because it was like my dad was like, "All right, he's 3.5. He's old enough. Let's show it him."
That's great.
Which will be me. So immediately after this, they come out of hyperspace and they're in an asteroid field, and they're like, "Where's Alderaan?" So I'm telling you, kid, it's not here, is what Han says. And he said it would have to take 1,000 ships or more of the Imperial Navy to destroy this. I don't know what happened. And then the TIE fighter comes in. This is kind of where the plot accelerates a little bit. They follow the TIE fighter because Han's like, I'm going to get this guy so he doesn't report us to the authorities, I can get him. And they see a moon in the distance. And then we have the iconic lines, "That's no moon. It's a space station. And Luke has the first of many... Yeah, Luke has the first of many lines to come. Like, I have a very bad feeling about this.
That's not the first time it's said in the movie, though.
I think it is.
No, I don't think it is, because hold on, did I write that down somewhere?
3PO?
Yeah, 3PO says it earlier
Yeah,
in the movie.
yeah. It's Leia in Empire. Everyone gets a go at this line.
Yeah.
Including K2, who gets cut off.
Which I have no problem with, but I was just 3PO
stuff.
does say it first.
Yeah. So the Falcon gets tractor beamed on the Death Star, as we all know. They hide, and Han's drug ducks, let's call it that,
I like
to
that.
a non EU person. And Han's like, I smuggle these. I used to smuggle things in these. I never thought I'd be smuggling myself. And then they all come out, and Han's not happy with Obi-Wan for this. They put on trooper disguises because they kill stormtroopers that come on the Falcon, which is fun. And they go into the first room right outside the hangar bay. And this is when Obi-Wan comes to Luke. And this is another pivotal moment, and says, I have things to attend to. I am to go disable the tractor beam, and my destiny has a different path than yours, Luke. The Force will be with you always. And he just leaves. And Han says, where did you dig up that old fossil? And Luke's like, Ben is a great man.
That I
Like
met
this-
yesterday.
Yeah. No, Luke's met him before. We've been told that. We just don't know through film. But
Oh,
you're
okay, they have encountered each other before, but Luke
Yeah.
hasn't met him before yesterday.
right. Yeah. And
I know that they've had some Marvel comic run-ins and stuff in current canon,
Yeah.
where Obi-Wan was watching over Luke, but they haven't actually met until yesterday.
Serious meeting. Well, that's the thing though, Mike. Was it yesterday or has it been half a week on the Falcon?
Cool. He met him a few days ago.
Or a week.
Is it enough to be like, he's a great man? How dare you?
Well, it says a lot about Luke though, because he has no father. He has a harsh uncle who's now dead. And so it's like Obi-Wan has immediately become his father figure. You know what I mean?
That's true. That's a good point. He's looking for someone to fill that.
He's more than just
that
a
role for him.
wizard. He's more than just a wizard mentor. And it's also his father. But at this point, Luke presents the idea to Han that Leia is on the Death Star because R2 keeps saying, she's here, she's here, she's here. And 3PO explains to them that Leia is actually on the Death Star. And Luke says, we got to help her. And Han's like, we? And he goes, she's rich. And he's like, all right, let's try this out. And then Luke has the idea of handcuffing Chewbacca. Yeah. He's like, hold on, Chewie. I think I know what he's got in mind.
Yeah.
So
This
things
is also
happen.
where R2? Yeah. R2 downloads the rest of the galaxy map necessary from the archives of the Empire to have all but the missing piece to locate Ahch-To and Luke in Episode 7.
This is the moment.
Yeah, no, like JJ confirmed that. This is when R2 gets that information. BB-8's got the missing piece in Episode 7.
That would make sense. So at this point, Luke, Han, and Chewbacca go to the detention cell block 1138.
1138.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say it. And they battle their way through. We have the great banter with Han on the comms.
Looking at the hate comparison column again, Luke's an awfully good shot to be able to take out these cameras and the stormtroopers and everything for some farm boy who's never used these military grade weapons before.
Well, he's more than a farm boy, Mike. We know that. He's highly force sensitive.
Oh, okay. Which I
You
agree
agree.
with you, but
Yeah.
applying that Last Jedi hate filter to the older movies, sometimes these questions come up.
Well, I'm gonna start rebuttaling these a little bit. So
Well, and I'm not saying you're a Last Jedi hater. I'm more talking about
I'm not.
the extremists online and everything. But sorry,
No,
I tried
you're
to
right.
derail us again. Keep us going.
yeah, don't get me derailed when I get to say things like Chewbacca gets to do things in these movies. But let's move on.
I know.
Let's move on. Chewbacca is the redheaded stepchild now, and I love him. So Han has the conversation with the Imperial officers over the line, which is great.
Love it.
And then they're like, we're sending new troops. And Han's like, no. Anyways, so Luke goes down the hall, gets Leia. Aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper? Oh, the uniform. Like Luke even has like a dumb moment, which is great.
He's
Takes
like,
off
oh
his
yeah,
helmet.
I am wearing this thing
Yeah,
that's supposedly
I'm a
really
bad
hard to see
guy.
through.
And I'm a bad guy. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue. And she's like, you're who? I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue. I'm here with Ben Kenobi and I have your droids. Ben Kenobi, where is he? Then they go. So then, of course, Leia sends them down the garbage chute. Han doesn't like that.
Well, no one
it's-
really likes the garbage chute, but it's
Yeah,
what
the
they have to do.
the Dianoga attacks our hero. Luke pulls Luke all the way under, but then lets him go randomly because it hears the walls closing in.
I was watching it. Luke is holding his breath for a really long time down there. This is actually impressive. Like
It's not
good on
like-
him for surviving.
Yeah.
And everything. But
Yeah.
I know if it was me, I would have screamed and been drowned already in the poop water down there.
And they almost die, but they are saved by R2 and 3PO, which is great. A lot of other scenes happen after this with Luke, Leia, Han, and Chewbacca running from stormtroopers and fighting stormtroopers in the hallways. A really fun line here is, Leia says, "You came in that? Oh, you're braver than I thought." And to Han, and then also, and he goes, "Nice,
Nice."
And that's my favorite line. And then also Luke, when Han and Luke, Leia, and Chewbacca all end up meeting back up again after a lot of fighting.
Ran into some old friends.
Yeah, we managed some old friends, and Han's like, "How are we doing?" And Luke's like, same as always, like not so good." But
Yeah.
you know,
Wait, no, that's not in this movie. That's in Return of the Jedi.
No, it's in this one. It's in this one.
Well, now
I wrote it down.
I need to go back and watch it again. We
But
also
you're right.
saw Han and Chewie encounter different numbers of stormtroopers because you saw him chase down the hallway.
Up to
and-
like 6 guys.
Yeah, and then I see the Canon
60,
special edition letter. It's like, oh,
60,
there's 60
the
people.
garrison.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, both of them make sense. That's the part I can't really refute. But, you
Yeah.
know,
It's the same effect and funny in both versions, but not in
worthwhile
this
scene
series.
to mention here is Luke and Leia get trapped on the bridge because Luke blasts the controls for the door, and they end up fighting stormtroopers across the bridge.
Great
Leia gives
moment.
him a kiss on the cheek for luck. They swing
It
across.
makes no architectural sense, but it's a great film moment.
Yeah, it's very Flash Gordon, in all the right ways. In all the right ways.
Yeah,
And they make it past, and then they make it back to the hangar. So Han, Chewie make it back to the hangar. Leia and Luke make it back to the hangar through separate paths, kind of looping around. At this point, we see Obi-Wan and Vader fighting. They've been fighting for a little while. They've been having great conversation, like all the original trilogy fights have.
now I
Great.
am the master.
Yeah. I was once the learner. Now I am the master. Only a master of evil, Darth. And Luke, Han, and all of them are boarding the Falcon. Luke's one of the last ones to go up the ramp, and he sees Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan looks at him. We hear the Force theme swell. Obi-Wan sacrifices himself. Vader kills him.
Bless you.
Always
might
two.
edit that.
There are my sneezes. Vader kills Obi-Wan. We hear the iconic no from Luke, and then we hear "Run, Luke, run!" and a ethereal voice of Obi-Wan. Something we haven't seen yet. It's going to keep happening. And Luke says to Leia, "I can't believe he's gone." He's kind of mourning Obi-Wan as the Falcon's flying away from the Death Star. But Han's like, "We're not out of this yet, kid." Han and
I'm
Luke
gonna stop
defend
you
the
again
Falcon.
for another robot chicken diversion because I loved when in the
thought of
robot
all
chicken
those.
events of this. Leia's like, "Oh, really? The strange wizard you met yesterday is gone. I just lost my entire family and my entire planet."
Yeah, that's a funny
Perspective,
one.
Skywalker.
Perspective. So they kill all the TIE fighters, and Leia's like, "Oh, they let us go. That's too easy. Surely they're tracking us." And Han's like, "Not this ship, sister. Not this ship." And, Luke, and then she's like, "I can't believe you care about anybody or anything." And she walks out on Han. Luke comes in. "I care." He says that.
Hey,
Which,
I'm here still.
and he goes, "What do you think of her, Han?" And he's like, "Man, try not to, kid." And he goes, "I don't know. What do you think about a princess and a guy like me?" Luke goes, "No." Like immediately just cuts him right off.
Mine.
Yeah, so they arrive on Yavin at this point, Yavin 4.
So,
it's
if Leia
canonical,
knew,
right?
if Leia knew that there was a tracker planted on them, and they knew that a planet-killing Death Star was following them, why did they go straight to the Rebel base?
That's a good question. I don't know. She was confident they were tracking her. She didn't know there was a tracker. But
Okay, if she was confident they were tracking them, why did she go straight to the Rebel base?
I don't know. Maybe she just thinks that they just got immediately assembled the fleet and the ships and attacked the Death Star.
I think the real reason is, film story over plot holes, but that's if you're going to apply perfect logic and reason to everybody, they're following us. Maybe we shouldn't go straight home.
Yeah, let's not even talk about tracking through hyperspace.
It's canon.
Yeah.
In your favorite of the new ones. I'm pointing at my computer screen with my pen right now.
Oh man.
All right, back to episode 4. I'm not sorry for that diversion.
What do you think of her, Han? All that good stuff. Then we get in on Yavin. They have the battle briefing on the Death Star. It looks like, I used to bullseye Wamprats back home, no bigger than 2 meters. So I think it's possible. Once again, we see Luke's optimism, his confidence, and it's not really arrogance. It's more just optimism and confidence. You know what I mean? He's putting things in perspective because the guys
it's
are
not-
like,
not arrogance.
that's hard for a computer. And Luke's like, well,
it's not knowing any better.
right.
Although
right.
I did write down the comparison of this is like Randy Quaid in Independence Day going from biplane crop dusting to flying an F-18.
The T-16 to the
T-16 Skyhopper to the T-65 X-Wing is sort of like going from a biplane crop duster to an F-18. And Randy Quaid saves the day in Independence Day. So, I mean, it can happen, but
So it's like pod racing to an N1 starfighter. Wait, that's actually a downgrade. technically,
Oh, yeah,
by the
probably.
universe. Pod racing is way more dangerous. Oh, this is Wizard. All right, well.
Oh man.
So they had the battle briefing. Then we have a really great scene between Luke and Han. Great moment for Luke and Han's characters. It looks like you got your reward and you're just leaving. Then take a look around you. These people could use a good pilot like you. You're turning your back on them. And Han's like, what's good as a reward if you're not alive to use it? And Luke's really disappointed, really sad. He goes, well, just take care of yourself, Han. I guess that's what you're good
this
at.
guy I thought was really cool wants to take the money and live. I do like how Han mocks him with the "May the Force be with you, kid." He doesn't say "kid" on it, but
He's being serious and he's also mocking. He's like, this is
He's
going to give him
doing both.
confidence. It's going to give him
and
confidence.
that's the Han we saw in Solo. He was a heart of gold, but trying to not be the good guy.
Right. And then we see Luke go up to Leia and she's like, what's wrong? And he's like, oh, it's Han. I wish, I don't know what to do. And she's like, he's got to choose his own path, Luke. He's got to choose his own path. He's like, I only wish Ben were here. And so next we have the scene with Biggs and the special edition, which is cut from the original edition. It
I
just
was
goes
glad that I saw that one where they'll never stop us.
It's a great, hey Luke. It's great. It looks like Biggs. And they run. It's kind of his realization that Biggs went to the Imperial Academy, eventually broke away, joined the rebellion, all that good stuff. Kind of Luke's path that Luke's on now, just an accelerated version. Luke is. Also, this guy's like, the next scene is, do you want another droid? This R2 unit's kind of outdated. Looks like
Not on your life. This droid I met yesterday, and I have been through a lot together.
They really have, though.
They have, but it is a droid he met yesterday, or
They're buddies.
last week, or whatever.
Or 2 weeks ago. You never know. But not in your life. So you okay back there, R2? And they go in. So then we have the X-Wings approaching the Death Star. This Red 5 standing by. Luke's moniker attacking the Death Star. His call sign. His World War II pilot status. And then we have a lot of scenes.
I will
Luke
say
doing
the
heroic
Canon
things.
or special edition does really benefit the space
Yes.
battle at the end of this movie. Like all the stuff in Mos Eisley and all the stuff in the first 3/4 of the movie
Not really necessary.
does not age very well, but it helps flesh out the different ship-to-ship engagements and just provides more like spatial context to the X-Wing assault on the Death Star.
Yeah, and what's cool is like there's not really anything added. There's just shots that are the worst shots were redone. I noticed that this time going back through.
and there are shots added that clear up where Wedge and Biggs are and Luke are when they're helping each other get the one off
Right.
the tail or whatever. It's all good, is what I'm saying.
But like that shot, like where Wedge saves Luke coming up. Like I just watched the despecial edition. That's still like where you see the TIE fighter pilot's cockpit. It's just Wedge coming straight on,
Right, but
like the whole way.
it's
then
much more clear when you see that Wedge comes at him from the front. In the
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's good stuff. So this Red 5, I'm going in, and they're like, Luke, you okay? And Biggs says that, and he's like, I just got a little cooked, but I'm okay. And then Obi-Wan says, Luke, trust your feelings. So this is our second time of hearing Obi-Wan's voice. And yeah, he just bombs the entire surface of the Death Star. Then Luke says, I can't shake him. That's when he gets the TIE fighter on his tail, and he's like, Biggs, where are you? Because he just saved Biggs. And that's when Wedge comes in, like Mike just said, saves Luke. Gold Leader, the Y-Wing leader, attacks the trench. Ends up being destroyed by Vader and his wingmen. And so that's Vader and his wingmen are out now, just destroying everyone. Red Leader.
I did laugh watching it again at how comically or at how much Vader is comically taller than those TIE fighter pilots when he's like, you two with me, and they go around the corner towards the hangar and they don't even come up to like his elbow or something.
And aren't those like serious guys like Backstabber and Gundark or something? Backstabber and
Mauler Mithel's one of them, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Maybe Backstabber's
they
the other
are
one.
much shorter than this guy.
And
They fit in that cockpit much better than this guy
so
does.
Red Leader attacks the trench. He suffers the same fate that Gold Leader does. He was Luke's superior, so he's like, get Star on your attack run. Luke, take your men in. Because he mentions to Luke before he makes the trench run that they're going to be the next run, if necessary.
Yeah.
Red Leader
So
dies.
Garvin Dreis almost hits the kill shot on the Death Star.
Very close, and it's away. It's a hit. Negative. Didn't go in.
Just
And
impacted
he-
on the surface, naming your sex tape.
Yeah, and Vader's right behind him, destroys him. But this is The next scene to me is when the movie just really goes into overdrive. We're going in full throttle, keep those fighters off our back, just be like Beggars Canyon back on. Or actually, Big says, Luke, do you think we can even pull out in time at that speed? And Luke goes,
Name your
just
six
be like Beggars Canyon back home. So they go in the trench. Wedge gets hit by Vader and his men, pulls out, runs away. And he's like, get clear, Wedge. And at this moment, Biggs is trying to block and cover for Luke, but then dies. And you see Luke's kind of face drop. Luke starts using the targeting computer and hears the words, use the Force, Luke. Let go, Luke, from Obi-Wan. And that's when Vader says the Force is strong with this one. At this point, Luke switches off his computer. Everyone at the Yavin base back home says, Luke, switch off your computer. What's wrong? And he says, nothing. I'm all right. He sounds really calm. At this
And
point,
to everyone else, they're like, "Oh God, the kid's lost it. He accidentally turned off the targeting computer and doesn't know how to turn it back on."
Yeah, he did only fly T-16s. Yeah, so at this point, Luke is really focused. Some great shots here, some tension building. Vader kills R2, shooting the back of the X-wing, and he says, "I've lost R2." And you see
moment when I was a kid first watching this.
You see 3PO look at Leia like, comfort me, and Leia's not looking at that. She's looking at the battle schematics. And then they say that you're clear to fire, and Tarkin says the iconic lines, "You may fire when ready." And at this point, Luke's about to fire, and Vader says, "I have you now." And then we hear the Han Solo yeehaw, yeehaw, yeah. And Han kills both of Vader's wingmen. Vader goes flying.
What?
You're all clear, kid. Now let's blow this thing, go home. And then Luke shoots the shot, takes the giant breath in.
So, do the proton torpedoes take a 90-degree turn because torpedoes are very precise, weapons that can track things, or does Luke use the Force to push them down the thermal exhaust port?
I have no idea. Based off the video games, they track things and follow things, but obviously Luke's not using the computer. So that's a whole nother thing. But maybe he knew they would arc that way,
I don't know. It's a pretty deliberate. Oh, hey, it's almost like a Wile E. Coyote cartoon where they stop and change direction and go 90 degrees down the.
They just take the quick turn. Great shot, kid. That was 1 in a million. And that's when Luke hears the voice of Obi-Wan one more time in this film. And remember, the Force will be with you always. And at this point, we see Vader fly away, spinning out of control, but he's getting away just fine.
In very classic serial fashion of, the villain got defeated this time, but he'll be back in the next one.
But the big villain's gone, Tarkin, the big villain of the first film. So, at
this
point,
I don't know. When you first see the movie, Tarkin is not the big villain. It's Darth Vader.
I don't know.
The more you know about canon, maybe, I can see Tarkin being the big bad, but
he's in charge.
Just seeing the movie, it's like, oh, Vader's the bad guy.
Yeah, mainly because he kills Obi-Wan. I feel like if he didn't do that, it'd just be all Tarkin because he's the one who drives the plot with the Death Star. But I don't know. It's interesting. He comes off his X-Wing, Luke. Everyone's cheering. Leia and Han give him huge hugs, and they're cheering. And, I knew there was more to you than money. And Han's like, I wasn't going to let you take all the credit and the reward.
Everyone thinks Luke yells Carrie when he's not.
It's just like, hey.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, that's Carrie. I'm like, So then we have the great score, the medal ceremony theme, which is so good.
And Chewie does get a medal. One of the good fixes from the Disney Star Wars canon. There was a comic series where Chewie reveals he was given a medal. It just didn't happen to make it to the
big ceremony
version of the film. And I love the theatrical version of this scene where so many of the people, of the troops and pilots standing in the audience are obviously cardboard cutouts.
Yeah. Pre-special edition.
Yeah, sad that that's not in the version that I watched.
They didn't have enough extras. Yeah, it just happened. But the theme swells. Everybody turns to the camera. We see Han, Luke. Han and Luke have the biggest smiles, Luke especially. And the movie ends. And so this is really good. Luke went a long way in this film. From farm boy to rebellion hero, Jedi Knight in training.
So it fits a big hero arc into one movie. So let's look at the third question, because this is a current canon source still. Does the Luke that we've seen in this movie, does this fit with the Luke we meet in The Last Jedi?
I'm not sure. Too much changes with his character between now and then, so it's kind of hard to see the path all the way to there without Empire and Return of the Jedi and all that in mind.
Yeah,
So
no.
I would
This
say
movie,
no.
this
I would say
movie
no.
at most happens, if you put in weird rules for hyperspace travel. At most happens what, over
A couple
a
weeks.
week? 2
Yeah.
weeks max.
Yeah.
So that's not a lot of time for a whole lot of character development. Not that there isn't any. He does grow as a character, but
There's a lot, yeah.
it's nothing to contradict necessarily what we've seen in The Last Jedi, because we know there are 2 more original trilogy movies to go before we get to seeing Luke again.
Right, but just black and whitely put, he's not like the Last Jedi Luke at all. But that's okay if we follow this arc further through. I mean, in this movie, he's
I'm gonna argue
idealistic,
that
right?
He is a little bit like the Last Jedi Luke, because we've established from the beginning Luke was kind of whiny, and at the beginning of the Last Jedi,
He's
Luke's
grumpy
a
and
little
whiny.
grumpy and whiny.
Okay. I could follow that through. Maybe I could reach there. I just thinking more along the lines of he's, idealistic. He's confident. He's naive to an extent. He is, he wants the best for the world, and you know what I mean. And
Well,
people around him.
Until you said that last part, he wants the best. That is what we saw. Luke in The Last Jedi had grown beyond that. He'd grown, disillusioned and nihilistic,
Right.
and he wanted the best for the galaxy. But to do that, he removed himself from it in The Last Jedi,
Right.
which is a big point of contention for a lot of people.
Sure. Yeah. Mark included. So this is very interesting.
So
Yeah.
we've gone on, looking at the time here, we've gone on long enough about the Luke arc in New Hope. We're going to keep talking about it. It's not enough we can just fit into 1 hour. I did just have some quick hits I want to go over from watching the movie that are not necessarily related to Luke, but I thought they were important or things I hadn't noticed before. And if you have any that you want to throw on there, feel free to say them. Right at the beginning, mad respect for the crew of the Tantive 4. Because now that Rogue One is out, they just saw Vader eviscerate their crewmen, but they're all ready to go to the
hold off.
Yeah, they're all ready to go to the airlock and be like, yeah, we got this. Not, oh God, we're going to die.
Yeah, they still look kind of scared. They've always looked kind of scared.
Absolutely, but there's what they're scared of now that Rogue One is out.
No, Gareth Edwards did a brilliant job of just gapping those films. It seems seamless. It really does. You're really good. Yeah. So another point here is, I guess you watched the special edition and I watched the despecialized edition, which is incredible. I think both of us saw some issues, honestly. There's a couple shots in the original Death Star attack that are absolutely not Star Wars level good today. Like, I'm talking Star Wars miniatures, like original shots,
Yeah.
they just don't hold up at all. Like some shots where it's just like where Luke's being chased by the TIE fighter, for instance, just a stagnant shot of Luke going across and the TIE fighter going across right behind him. There's no motion to the camera. There's no motion to the miniatures. Not the case in Empire, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
So really, there's some pluses and minuses to both versions, of course. Mos Eisley is a travesty, like you're talking about.
Yeah. Let's see. I've already talked about Chewie bumping his head on Han's dice.
The Outrider.
Don't get me started.
It's in the background.
That's in episode 3 when we talk about Shadows of the Empire, actually.
Sure.
So this is a thought I had watching Obi-Wan and Darth Vader fight on the Death Star, the lightsaber fight. A thought I'd never had before. Is Vader scared or nervous to fight Obi-Wan? Because when this came out, he was just the ultimate bad guy, the villain embodiment of evil. But once we have the prequels and we know the arc of Anakin Skywalker,
You would think so, yeah.
in the added context of Star Wars Rebels, where he has to fight Ahsoka, his apprentice, and Ahsoka, who ultimately survived the battle. I think it would have been better for her story if she died in Rebels, but she kind of kicks Vader's ass in Star Wars Rebels. He barely makes it out of there too. So this is the second encounter that Darth Vader is having with someone from his previous life, and I guess it's the third one, and this is the one who made him the monstrosity that he is today. Is Vader as a character not scared because he's got the false confidence of the dark side, but is he apprehensive at all to fight Obi-Wan?
I think so, yeah, a little bit, but he's obviously overcompensating a little bit. He's like, you should have not have come back. He says that to Obi-Wan and things like that. But how much is that pure confidence, and how much of that is, we got to do this again,
Well, and I had this question pop into my head just seeing the lightsaber fighting has evolved so much over the course of making Star Wars, but at times they're just sort of hopping towards each other with the lightsaber pointed out. And really tentative. Both parties, Vader and Obi-Wan, are real tentative with each other. So I was wondering, obviously in 1977 this was not the case, but today could it be seen as, Vader? He's fighting his former master who almost killed him. He was got his butt kicked by his former apprentice not too horribly long ago. Is he a little actually apprehensive at encountering Obi-Wan again?
I like that. I like that a lot.
And I don't know that there's a good answer to that, but I thought it was an interesting, question I had.
I don't know if this is a question, but another really cool observation I thought of during this film is every parental or mentor figure or friend of Luke is almost removed by the end of this movie. We're always left now with Han and Leia, his new friends, but we learn that he's lost his father. He loses his aunt and uncle. Obi-Wan becomes his new father, mentor. He loses Obi-Wan. He meets up with his friends again at the Rebel Alliance, and they end up dying, protecting him, basically. So all of his ties to his old life are gone. And I know a lot of this is the hero's journey stuff. And he's kind of forced into this new role as like an adult / a hero, whether he wants to or not. And then it's like he's adopted into this family, the trio of Han, Leia, and Luke, but we also have Chewie and the droids, and obviously other various characters that come up through the series. But it's kind of like he's pulled from every single thing he knows, and I thought that was really interesting to think about.
Yeah,
and a lot of it mirrors Anakin's story, not as extreme because Anakin comes from slavery and all that stuff, but I mean it's. Luke is, he's, as Obi-Wan says, he's taking your first steps into a much larger world, and that's thrown into this film, and, they establish he's a good pilot. They establish he's strong on the Force and all these things, but they come to fruition by the end of this movie, but he also has no one left, but it also bonds him closer to Han and Leia, which I find so interesting because by the time we get to Empire, it's been years. So his relationships with Han and Leia have grown a lot. And when you think about his family,
3 years between A New Hope and Empire.
And they're family now, So I thought that was really interesting as well. So it helps him grow.
And that was our exploration into who is Luke Skywalker in episode 4, A New Hope. We hope you had a good time going back through the movie with us. Even though I just watched it 2 days ago and I've seen it a billion times, I had a great time going through it again with Jesse. We hope you enjoyed this first episode of the Canon Cantina. If you like what we do, you can find us on Facebook. We got a Facebook page, just Canon Cantina. You can find us on Twitter at Canon Cantina. If you have any thoughts you want to share with us, points you want to make about one of the A New Hope or any other canon source, something you want us to talk about on the show, send us an email, canoncantina@gmail.com, or just tweet at us at Canon Cantina.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you guys, especially revolving around this episode. What did you think about Luke in this? Are there any parts of his character arc you'd like to mention to us? And we can mention in future episodes.
If we were wrong, I want you to tell us, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we've got a lot to go, Mike. This is just the beginning. We're just scratching the surface. That is this character. It's huge. So please reach out to us in those places, guys. And please share this podcast and like those pages for us because it's going to help us reach more people with this show.
Rate and review, please.
Because I know we mentioned this in the teaser episode, but I don't think we mentioned it much in this episode, and we're going to mention it more in future episodes. But a whole reason we're doing this is more than just our love of Star Wars and our love of this character, but it's our love of the community and our love to keep the community together.
That's right. Exactly.
We don't want this polarization going on. Even if there's someone like me who thinks The Last Jedi is my least favorite of the new 4 films, I don't want to create polarization. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many things to talk about in this.
Absolutely. We want to hear all sides of this fandom perspective. We want to hear all perspectives. And if you have some thoughts that you think are relevant, we'll talk about them on the show. We want fans to be united. It's okay to not like a movie. It's fine.
Definitely.
We're all still Star
Definitely.
Wars fans.
Yeah, I'm still a Transformers fan, Mike.
Oh, hey, I love the Michael Bay stuff, so it's fine.
See, I don't, but I'm still a diehard fan. So there's more things to talk about in the future. But please like all our pages, guys. It'll keep you in contact with us when our new stuff comes out, and it will help us make the show better. But join us next week as we dive into probably the greatest film of all time, if not one of the best, The Empire Strikes Back in 1980, where we examine Luke's arc and his journey on the Jedi Padawan path. So join us next week, and thank you for your time. May the Force be with you. Cheers.
Thanks for joining us in the Canon Cantina, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Boring conversation anyway.